As we get into 2A, it is important to understand the concept of rhythm and tempo as it applies to two-handed tricks. So we will be borrowing some terminology from another dual-handed skill toy called poi. Rhythm is the pattern of spacing between beats, or when talking about yo-yoing, we are talking about the structure of both yo-yo's movement and timing relative to each other. Tempo, as opposed to rhythm, is just the speed of the beats. So when thinking of an around the world as a beat, if you want to increase the tempo, you just want to increase the beats per minute. If you want to decrease tempo or have a slow tempo, slow down and decrease your beats. When talking about tempo, you want to make sure that you keep tempo the same in order to talk about rhythm. You can do the tricks as fast or as slow as you like, just keep the tempo the same if you want to have your rhythm be consistent. So assuming same tempo, the three terms we will borrow from poi about rhythm are called same time, split time or half time, and quarter time. So a good place to define and get a feel for these three terms will be in the trick around the world. So the way to think about the around the world now is not just going to be thinking of a full around the world as one beat. We're going to need to define each around the world in 4 beats instead. So think of the first beat as in front of you, the second beat up top, the third beat will be behind you, and then the fourth beat will be towards the ground. When you're defining around the worlds with the same timing, you want to think of the yo-yos as completely in phase with each other. So on the first beat, the around the worlds will be matched up, and on the second beat, 2, third beat, and fourth beat, the yo-yos will be in the same place at the same time. When you're thinking about split time, you want to have the yo-yos separated 180 degrees from each other. So that would mean that when one yo-yo is in front of you, then one is behind you. When one is on top, one is on bottom, and vice versa. And when you're thinking about quarter time, you're going to have one yo-yo 90 degrees out of phase with the other, or think of it as one yo-yo is ahead by 90 degrees, and that would be your lead yo-yo. And when you're in quarter time, you can think of it as either your left hand is the leader or your right hand is the leader. So now that we defined the terms in around the world, we're going to want to get our practice and our feel of the rhythm in around the world. And the way to start that is to practice with the yo-yos dead as the easiest option. So you are going to be working on it as though you are a poi player, learning same time, learning quarter time, and learning split time in around the world without them spinning. But since we are 2A players, we're going to want to eventually learn how to do it with them spinning. And so the way to start that will be just practicing 1 repetition of around the world in same time. And then once you get used to that, then go ahead and try doing 2 repetitions of around the world and keep on building up in baby steps. Eventually, you're going to start to feel out that there's a bit of a difference between your weak hand and your dominant hand. Your weak hand usually has a tendency to have a slower tempo, and after a few repetitions, it will become apparent and it will seem like you're transitioning into a different rhythm. Once that happens, you're going to want to backtrack and then start over again and start over with a split time rhythm instead. So you're just going to practice the split time rhythm, just 1 repetition, and then you'll keep on building that up until you eventually master the trick and do it indefinitely, and then backtrack and then start learning the rest of the same time, so that way you can do that indefinitely as well. However, in around the worlds, we also have quarter time, so we're going to need to find a way to intersperse that in our progression of learning the timings. So at any point in time, just once in a while, try to figure out how to do the around the world in quarter time, and eventually it may click. For some players, it may be really easy to pick up. For others, you may have to master the other 2 rhythms before you can even work on this one. So it all depends on when you want to do it. So just every once in a while, check on that. The way to practice quarter time is going to be just start out learning forward tosses in quarter time. So it's going to be throw, throw, catch, catch, throw, throw, catch, catch. And then once you get used to that, you can then try 1 around the world in quarter time. So it'd be throw, throw, rest, rest, catch, catch. Throw, throw, rest, rest, catch, catch. So once you have quarter time down, then you have mastered the 3 concepts in around the world, and you can then start applying them elsewhere as well. So the next sensible place to apply this concept of rhythm and timing is going to be in your two-handed looping. So start off learning two-handed looping and same time. Then once you are a few repetitions into it and you start seeing your weak hand start to slow down and start to change the timing of the trick, then start over and work on it in split time and keep on practicing it until you're able to do it indefinitely there. Then backtrack and go into same time and keep practicing that until you can do it indefinitely here as well. And this is all to help you practice your way out of making sure that when your weak hand is slower in tempo, you're practicing your way into making sure that your weak hand can come up to speed with your dominant hand. After you're able to do that, you'll notice that when the yo-yo is in this basic motion like this, it's kind of different than the around the world, so there isn't really any sense of having 4 beats in this trick, so there's not really a quarter time to work on in this trick. So just avoid working on quarter time and two-handed looping altogether. Once you're able to learn in two-handed looping, this also applies when you're learning Milk the Cow. This also applies when you're learning punches, and it also applies when you're learning vertical punches. So all of these are what we call one-step looping trick, where it's just one looping continuous motion and it only takes 1 step to do. It's going to be different when you're learning your different two-step tricks, which will be your flips, which will be your stalls, and even shoot the moon. Now these are two-step looping tricks because the trajectory of the yo-yo is changing over the course of the trick. You'll notice that when I do flips, the first time the yo-yo comes back towards my hand, the yo-yo is going to pass in front of my hand and then go on the inside of my hand. And then when the second step comes in, it's going to go from the inside of my hand and go in front of my hand. And those are considered 2 different steps. So on the second step, it could be a mirror image or it could be just some completely different step. When you have your two-step tricks, the approach is going to be different in terms of learning your timing. And so with these two-step tricks, you want to make sure that the yo-yo is completely lined up every single time, straight up and down. And that can be really tough to focus on. And so with the different timings, it's going to actually be easier to learn this trick in quarter time. Once you've learned how to do it indefinitely in quarter time, you can then start thinking about how to learn it indefinitely in same time and then in half time as well. Usually same time is easier in these sets of tricks, but for some players it could be easier to learn half time before same time, or you could learn them both as you go along. As you're doing these two-step tricks and these one-step tricks, you'll notice that if you combine a one-step trick with a two-step trick, you'll see that there's just 2 different tempos going on, and it's really hard to establish what is considered a rhythm. So you don't even need to think about rhythm when you're combining a one-step trick with a two-step trick. You just need to think of having the one-step trick just be constant and moving and going, and just think of the two-step trick as its own tempo and just focus on keeping the yo-yo straight and focus on that tempo. For those that are working on warp drive, this will be a good approach to do it. Is start in same time loops and go into same time around the world and go back into same time loops. And you'll just keep on practicing that until you're capable of doing 1 around the world per 1 set of loop. And you want to be able to establish that rhythm and get it consistent about 3 or 4 repetitions. Once you're able to do that, then go into split time loops and regen into around the worlds back into split time loops. You'll notice that the around the worlds are actually in quarter time while the loops are in split time, which is a pretty radical concept, but your hands are going to feel it out pretty easily. Once you're able to do that, where you have the quarter time around the worlds led by the left hand, and you can do that indefinitely, and then you can do it the same way with the right hand leading, and you can do that indefinitely, then you're going to want to work on half time, which is definitely the hardest version of warp drive. The way to start that is going to be starting in same time loops, and then you're going to regen 1 and 2 around the world, and then you're going to do 1 loop with the other hand. Once you do that loop with the other hand, that one goes into and around the world, and then you have established halftime from there. In order to continue halftime, you're going to want to just regen the yo-yo as it comes around, and then the halftime warp drive will eventually show up. But it's still a pretty tough concept to get, so you're going to want to learn it 1 repetition and just learn in baby steps and get it 1 step at a time until you're able to do it indefinitely. So those are good approaches to most of the main concepts of two-handed yo-yoing. There is one more thing to think about in terms of rhythm, and that is if you want to change rhythm while you're in the middle of the trick without needing to catch the trick and start over in a different rhythm. And that will also have to bring in the concept of tempo as well. So say you are doing a trick in same time and you want to go into split time. So one way to do that is to make one yo-yo move faster tempo, so that way you can get into split time, or you can make one yo-yo slow down, so that way you go and change times as well. Usually moving faster is more of the easier way to do things, but if you want to set yourself up to learning, say, rap tricks or working on different concepts like your flip tricks or your shoot the moon, it's going to be pretty important to learn to resist that and actually try to force a yo-yo to slow down rather than speed up, because that will give you more control over time and will help you learn more of the advanced concepts in two-handed yo-yoing. So you may be wondering, we've been talking about rhythms in 2A in terms of same time, in terms of half time or split time, and in terms of quarter time. But the question is, can you take rhythms in 2A and break it up into thirds? And the answer is, in some respects of 2A, is yes. Think of this example, the most basic example of thirds. Think of inside loops and outside loops in the following sequence. So you're going to throw 2 inside and 1 outside loop, and you're going to continue to repeat that over and over again. So it's going to be inside, inside, outside, inside, inside, outside, inside, inside, outside. And you're going to keep on doing that until you're able to do that rhythm with your strong hand and with your weak hand indefinitely. Once you're able to do that, you can then try to combine them together into two-handed. So you can start in same time and go inside, inside, outside, inside, inside, outside, and so on. Once you're able to do that indefinitely, you can then try to do some alternating patterns with it while you're still in same time. So think of it as you're going to do an inside loop, and then you're going to do an outside loop with your right hand, then bring them back in, and then you're going to do an outside loop with your left hand, bring it back in, and you're going to continue the pattern as such. Once you're able to do that, then you can start thinking about how to loop in split time while being able to maintain this thirds rhythm. So what you can do is you can think of it as you're just going to be doing an outside loop once in a while, and then just bring it back in. So it'll be outside, 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 and so on. After you learn these rhythms, you can then start combining thirds together with different rhythms in terms of the yo-yos, and then different rhythms in terms of how you do inside-outside loops. And you can keep on working on that. You can do it while you're in Milk the Cow. You can do it pretty much in any one-step looping trick. Once you're able to do that, then you have really mastered all the rhythms there are to know in 2A. And those are the basic terminology of rhythm and timing in 2A. As we get into 2A, it will be important to understand and apply the concepts of rhythm and tempo to two-handed tricks. So we will be borrowing some terminology from another dual-handed skill toy called poi. Rhythm is and once you're able to play around with thirds and be able to play with it in same time and split time loops, you can then start applying that elsewhere, like in all your one-step tricks, and the sky is the limit. And that is the